so we just missed
We
each
probably
other.
just
And then when she ended up working for Southwest, she moved downtown. And so I moved to apartments that were right there off of Pear Ridge before you got to Haverwood. Yeah. And John actually was living in those apartments.
But
Crazily
a
enough.
lot of EDS people live there.
It was crazy. A place.
That's crazy. Yes.
But anyway, I remember I had this little plan.
You ready?
That's so funny.
I gave it to a first year teacher. So
Mike's hot.
Sweet. Are mics on?
Is this good? Test. Test 1, 2.
what if he uses this one? What if I just move this over? How's that?
Okay. Woo. All right. I'd like to announce that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is 6:06 p.m. We ask that all those in attendance conduct themselves respectfully at all times during this meeting. Any outbursts or disruptive behaviors may result in your removal from this evening's board workshop. The following board members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasan, Catherine Sells, Dr. Buddy Bonner, Christy Hassett, Jenny Prosnick, and Sheila Taylor. I have asked Ms. Lasan if she would lead us in prayer.
Dear Lord, thank you so much for all the wonderful blessings that you give us each and every day. I pray that you would bless everyone in this room and just help us all to make good decisions and to know your will. I pray for all of our teachers and staff and administrators that are back in our classrooms and getting ready, and I just pray that that excitement would just go throughout the whole year, and that you would be with them and wrap your arms around them and help them to have a wonderful year. And pray for the students and parents that are at home enjoying the last few days of summer. Keep them safe and help them return to school healthy and happy. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees must fill out speaker's cards. In accordance with district policy, only speaker cards addressing items on today's agenda will be acknowledged. No presentation shall exceed 3 minutes. The Board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda. Each speaker will receive a written follow-up from the district in the next 3 business days. The Board and district administration values the feedback shared during this time of the meeting. And we are grateful for the continued partnership between LISD and the families and communities we serve. There are no speaker comments. Let me just say, Dr. Epp, before you start, I went to the only convocation today. I know there's one at Hebron tomorrow, but thank you for that, and staff. I mean, that was fantastic. It was inspirational. I know I shared a story about a student's feedback from it. Dr. Rapp has heard others, but, having gone through this 9 times now, I think that those were, and I wasn't at the others, but I'm sure they were just as special. It was really good, really good. And it was motivational, it was meaningful, and I think it's the tone that we need to set. So thank you for that. And with that, I'll turn the discussion items over to you.
All right. Thank you, President Miller. I also have some thanks to give, and that's to the amazing team of people that are in the room tonight that have helped prepare the information that we're going to go through this evening. And so, I'm so grateful for all of them, and I know that Paige and Sheila have important information to share with us, and they're thankful for their teams that are here. So essentially, we have our presentation tonight. Of course, the presentation starts off with a review of the 21-22 budget, and then we'll shift gears and go into the 22-23 budget. And, of course, there'll be time for questions. I believe we have that at the end. Right, Paige? Yeah, at the end. All right, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Mooney.
Thank you so much, President Miller, Dr. Rapp, and members of the board. It's great to get to come before you this evening to present some information both on our current fiscal year and for our budget for the 22-23 school year. We'll review the 21-22 budget, and then we'll go straight into what we think our projections are for the coming school year. So in looking back at fiscal year 22 budget and, coming into the district new, it is, you have to learn the ways of the district and how August is going to go. So this is a very conservative estimate. We do roll encumbrances, and so I think that will help a little bit, but I'm going to come in pretty conservative and think it was a $26 million, roughly $26 million deficit. We're looking at about 19.5 now, a little less than that, with the $7 million ESSER offset, conservative estimate of ending the year at 12.4. What I want to draw your attention to is this slide and looking at these three areas. In our revenue, we had budgeted at $552,000. We are projecting a little bit more than that, $552 million, and we are projecting $516 million, and that is largely due to us not collecting our M&O property tax. We had overstated that levy and overstated our tax collections, so that is in the red because that is a difference in what we originally budgeted. Thank goodness we had significant expenditure savings. It appears as if we'll have significant expenditure savings starting at $579 million and projecting coming in somewhere around $534 million. And so that's a positive difference of about $45 million. Now, I'll be real honest with you and any budget person in the room, revenue is a lot easier to get a handle on. I mean, there are very few line items in a school district M&O budget on the revenue side, and so you can do an analysis and work as a team and do some analysis in about 2 days' time and land pretty well. Expenditures is another story, and so that will take some time. We were able to make some adjustments based on this for the next school year, but it'll take some time to kind of come to why that offset was there, and so we are committed to doing that in the finance department over time. With our numbers right now we budgeted our recapture at $57 million. We are projecting that it will come in at $51 million due to the lesser tax collections and where the student enrollment and ADA is going to fall out. That would be to the positive of $6 million. So those are some things that I felt like the board you needed to know. Some of the reasons for the changes since the last projection, we did have an adjustment to the available school fund. And then, of course, as I said, some conservative expenditure estimates. We have had significant increases in costs related to fuel, utilities, and supplies. Our utilities this summer, due to the hot summer that we're having, have been pretty significant year over year. Just at the average high school bill, June to June, is about $30,000 more than it was in the previous June. So, that's, and we don't run them all in July, but when the campuses are there in June, that was a significant change. Our summer staff development and contract renewals and back-to-school expenses also figure into some of the changes since the last projection. So anytime that you are forecasting a deficit budget and then projecting for a deficit budget, it is good for us to go back and look at our fund balance requirement that we state in our audit, where we say that our district will not drop below a minimum of 3 months of expenditures in assigned fund balance in the general operating fund. The financial rating system for Texas only mandates 75 days. We're putting that at 90 for our district. So we ended the year, this is the fiscal year 21 close, that would have been last year, with $170 million. And you can see that our assigned fund balance was $132 million, which would represent that 3 months of expenditures for the budget. And this slide kind of outlines that particular concept of how we ended fiscal year 2021 if our projection were to happen in 2022 just the way that I said it was going to happen, and we feel like that's a conservative estimate. And then if the projection we're giving you today for fiscal year 2023, you can see that we're getting pretty close, because once as your expenditures increase, that portion of what you're going to put in assigned fund balance is also going to increase. We don't have that in our CE local policy, that fund balance policy. It might be something that we would want to take a look at down the line to have that codified in our policy rather than just having that in our audit. So wanted to bring that to your attention. And anytime we are, when we come together before you on August the 29th to present our budget, and you will be passing a budget, I always like to say it is a day and time. And there are so many variables. I mean, think about the taxes, the kids. I mean, the kids come and go, the staff come and go, and those types of things. It's within probably a 95% threshold. It is simply a day and time, and that's why we want to come to you. We come to you every month and say, here's where we think we are now, and it'll be very important moving forward. In a recapture district, it's hard to give a projection in September, October, November, but by December, January, we should be able to come. We should be able to come to you at the monthly meeting to add in your financials. This is where we think we're going to end at fiscal year. So we're committed to work on that. Won't be able to do that. In non-recapture districts, you can start looking at that as early as your first 6 weeks. So some school finance key points. Our district tax rate, like many with high value growth, high taxable values, our tax rate has declined over time because of the compression of House Bill 3. Higher property values don't really mean increased revenue because of the way it offsets. There is additional revenue for LISD that could still be out there through a TRE if we wanted to go get those last 3 golden pennies. It would not behoove us to go get copper pennies because we would be paying recapture essentially on those because of our wealth level. But there is some talk that in the legislature that we will be looking at a higher yield for those golden pennies, so it is something that we want to look at over time. And as our values increase and our debt capacity grows stronger and stronger, we can start talking about those golden pennies and if we would ever want to do that. ADA is the most important driver of district revenue. Let me repeat that. ADA is the most important driver of district revenue. And House Bill 3 has really driven that home. Inflation has outpaced House Bill 3 gains. It's a wash at this point with the inflationary increases. The district budget is primarily tied to staff, and district budget is restricted by TEA mandated programs, and we'll get to some of those in just a little bit. So you're very familiar with our local being the majority of the share of our general fund revenue assumptions, state with 14% and federal at 3%. We've discussed in the last workshop that really for state funding, the TRS revenue that we receive is an in and an out. It goes right back out. And then the state money that we receive is less than the recapture payment that we have to make on the expenditure side. and then our federal percentages there. So when we think about our revenue assumptions, we've been over the ADA, and we don't have that slide in here today, but I've got it pulled up if we want to look at. We know that our revenue is based on our ADA assumptions. But some big news here is the school districts receive certified values by July 25th. Our Denton Central Appraisal District provided an estimate for taxing entities, so that's creating some confidence issues for projecting revenue for our school district. And then Tarrant County did provide certified values, but that's less than 1% of the LISD value, so that is pretty much immaterial. You remember this slide from the other evening when we talked about our tax rate has already been spit out, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit as we entered our data. And this is the slide that we have to keep up with all along to be able to see from the preliminary values in April all the way through the following September, almost a year and a half later at near final. So something to keep in mind. When we look at general fund revenue assumptions, our tax rate for the 22-23 school year on the M&O side is going to be 85 cents and some change, 85.59. Our 21-22 rate was 92.76, so you can see the compression there before you. And we split it out by our Tier 1 compressed tax rate that TEA sets for us as we turned in our estimate to the state last week. And then our 5 golden pennies that we have in the formula. I'll draw your attention to our other local revenue. I feel like this is a very important area for us to focus on in the future. It represents about $15.2 million in our total general operating budget local revenue. You can see the categories there. We're going to take, and I told you this in a past budget workshop, we're going to take a real hard look at these areas and see if there's any way that we are able to leverage this. I mean, even if we were able to, collect $20 million, what a difference that would make. And so we're constantly going to be looking for ways that we can offset some of these challenges that we have. Just wanted to show you that tax compression. So I thought this was kind of interesting. Amber said, look, the M&O tax rate has decreased by 18.54 cents since 2018-19. That's a 17.7% decrease in the tax rate for LISD residents. Now we know that their values have gone up, so there's that, but the tax rate has come down, and we know that that'll be on the agenda for the legislative session in January as well. And this slide you've seen before. We're projecting right now, of course I can't read that number, 11.6% growth based off the estimate. So a little bit about tax collections, because we have this situation where we did not collect what we budgeted in our taxes. And in pre-House Bill 3, districts could live off the lag, and they could collect taxes based on prior year values. And you can see the red line represents when we went to House Bill 3. And before that, the district was collecting over what we had projected. And then you can see a pattern and a pretty significant downturn in this school year of that you're not able to do that anymore. And any CFOs that have been around a long time, this was a hard adjustment to make, because you're used to just being able, and especially when we want to get a balanced budget, and my teacher used to just tell me, push the taxes page. You cannot do that anymore at all, because you're based on current year values. So looking at we've already kind of been over this with our state revenue. We do have that other line item there for other Foundation School Program Act. We're hoping to collect some property value audit dollars there. But again, probably it's not going to be match what we're paying more out in recapture than all of those combined, and then our TRS goes right back out the door. wanted to talk a little bit about, and it gets a little complicated, but just kind of stay with me here. So the first two columns, all of those funding areas, special education, dyslexia, so on, all the way down, we get an allocation for those based on the students that we have. And in the case of the transportation allotment, it's on a linear density, so it's something based on mileage, a formula that I don't have committed to memory. But anyway, so that's the allotment there. And then in the second column is based on what the template's showing us right now is what our mandated expenditure would be, what we have to spend. But I want to draw your attention to what we actually spent in 21-22, so you can see we're spending well over. And think back to that state aid slide. We're not getting any. We're not even getting the state aid to pay for what they're saying that we have to spend on the kids. Now, we know that the mandated expenditures and the student allotments are the floor. They're not the ceiling. They want you to spend on the kids all the way up, but it's just that's what it is. And in the transportation, I think Ms. Prosnick brought this to our attention back in May. She wanted to say, okay, how much are we actually spending versus how much we actually get? And you can say that transportation is not a mandated program, but it's heavily driven by compliance by students in the relation to the distance from their home. So spending well beyond what the state is giving us in that area. And I suspect that we will we're budgeting even more for next year due to fuel costs. And on our federal side, we will make a commitment to you that indirect costs will be charged to federal grants whenever that is feasible. That is just money that is coming back into the general operating fund and helps to offset deficits. You can look at the SHARS, the impact aid, and the impact aid is our federal land by the lake. Child nutrition, we had not been collecting our indirect costs from the child nutrition fund, and we brought that back into the general operating fund. It was better for us than trying to segment out those costs in the child nutrition budget, and saved us a little money there. Not much, but a little bit. And then our ESSER 3 indirect costs are there as well. So here are some expenditure assumptions for fiscal year 2023. Recapture payment of $54 million. Payroll almost $430 million, fuel and utilities at $4 million, insurance at $1.4 million, and contracts at $5.3 million. We are still, in the last hours of our property insurance negotiation today. We had budgeted for a $600,000 increase in property value insurance. I think it's going to be. We're going to have to budget about $400,000 to $500,000 more. The market is terrible. We didn't have any storms last year, thank goodness, and we're coming down in the lower end for districts in the area. I think Frisco had some storms that they're really being affected by this. We came in the lower area, but we've been on the phone with negotiators all day today. Probably going to be looking at a $400,000 to $500,000 increase for property insurance. The market is just not good at all. Here are some of the things that we've put back into the budget for things that we've talked about. So we did the staff raise back in April. We've done some market adjustments. This on the payroll side is everything above the line. District market adjustments, the substitute contract, teachers of tomorrow, and the bereavement leave. And then some of the things below the line are an increase for the recapture payment, the fuel, safety and security, of course, our audits and our upgrades, that expenditure for the property value study should we recover the revenue in the prior year value study, some career and technology upgrades, the weight equipment upgrades from the facilities walks, and then that increase to the DCAD budget of $500,000, $500,000.
So I want to make a note just on this slide, a couple of things. One, on the career and technology upgrades, that was, of course, due to the fact that with that mandated spending that we talked about, we were having a hard time meeting the mandated spending requirement with TEA. And so I spoke with you all in various ways about we had to put ourselves on a CTE spending plan. And so that's what some of that information is about. The weight equipment upgrades, of course, I've talked about my concern around the weight equipment from those walks and just the safety concerns around those weights that are out there in many of our locker rooms. And so that's an item that we can ultimately have some flexibility around, but we've gone ahead and built the budget that you're seeing tonight reflects that estimate of what it would take to make those safety improvements for our kids. And I think the other thing, when we had the original budget conversation, we thought we probably would have to raise fuel at that time when we talked in March or May. We weren't for sure at that time what that was going to look like. So we didn't build in at that time the full amount of fuel, just waiting to see what happened. And then with safety and security audits and upgrades, this is a little more money than what we originally talked about, just to create a little bit of cushion in the budget. There were some items there that Mr. Garrett had on his list that were unknowns at the time. So we do not anticipate that expense to go larger than this. If anything, the expense would be much less than what you see at that 2.5, but that's an estimate there. So just a few notes about those things that are on that slide.
I think you wanted to discuss this one too, Dr. Rapp.
Yes. Yep, this is me. Okay, so as part of the 100-day plan, as I had shared along the way in board notes, that I conducted an analysis of our staffing compared to our peers. Dr. Bonner put me on the path of looking at our staffing by creating this unit of, you look at your staffing levels per 1,000. You kind of equalize things across districts. And so when I've looked at 7 of our most comparable peer districts in the Metroplex, for 6 out of 7 of them, we would have to add additional staffing positions to compare to their staffing levels per 1,000 students. And that would require really anywhere between 100 more positions being added, all the way up to one district, we would have to add almost 1,000 to be up to the staffing level where they were. Per 1,000 students. So there's definitely a level of efficiency that we're seeing, and I thought that was also, while unintended, a great testimony to our staffing analyzer. There's definitely additional things that we can continue to do over time, but that analysis really speaks to the power of those staffing analyzers we built and where we stand compared to our other districts. And then through continuing to right-size our staffing as we look at enrollment trends, we have been able to close through attrition, of course, an overall of 30 positions that's reflected in this budget. That is actually a net number, because you really ultimately you change positions more than that to account if you have to add a few more because you need more life skills teachers because of special education. Then what happens is some of the positions you close, you repurpose into those kind of teachers in order to help with those needs. And we do see that our special education numbers continue to increase, and that does impact our life skills, our BIC, and our SDI. I think the last time we talked with you about special ed, actually our life skills numbers are outpacing our BIC numbers right now. And of course, where that puts us, life skills takes more adults per student than anyone else. And of course, we're proud that our school district is known for great special education services, but there is definitely a staffing impact to that. Additionally, I had shared this earlier on in the spring, but I also conducted a function code analysis, because as your enrollment goes down, you want to look at what your spending is like on those function codes, so your function 11s, your function 13s. And when I looked a little bit deeper compared to districts like us, we are definitely well within a normal range of our peers, who also are experiencing an enrollment decline as well. So I just wanted to share that information. This budget reflects those staffing efficiencies, and it also reflects staying within that normal range on our function code spending.
And so this slide shows what we actually spent in fiscal year 2021, what we adopted for this school year, fiscal year 2022, and we've already reviewed that our revenue is coming in about $36 million short of that, and our expenditure savings are about $45 million in expenditure savings. So you can see that we had room to make some adjustments for what we what we came to you with before. So we are projecting right now a starting deficit of $15 million with the $7 million ESSER offset at $8.3 million. And we do know already, every webinar that I'm on for school finance, there is going to be some relief for school safety, even I think in this, before the next biennium. We don't know what that is at this time. So advocacy would be good. I mean, get the commissioner thinking about that in our favor. And I mean, my goodness, right now the state's sitting on a $27 billion surplus.
And I know we talked about this in March at the very first budget workshop, but of course the board had asked that we really look at how to close that gap a little bit more between revenue and expenditures. And so I think this really shows that, you know, we've worked hard to get that gap closed, along with realizing that, you know, 100% of the staffing positions that you put out there are not going to be filled. Just the nature of staffing where things are right now, you're going to run at any given time. You're not going to run at 100% of everything filled. And so we've also taken a hard look at that, because we definitely know the more we're realistic about that, the better we close that gap, and that allows you all to make better decisions about what the deficit will be and what can you do with the revenue that you're getting.
Okay, moving on to debt service for fiscal year 2023. I know that this slide is a little busy, but stay with me just for a little bit. We are going to be proposing through Truth and Taxation an INS rate that will remain at 38 cents, 38.09 for fiscal year 2023. We are seeing increased property values, and what that does is it increases your debt capacity and decreases your taxpayer interest burden. Because we have capability and possibilities for possible refunding, and definitely, I'm thinking for next year, a defeasance. But kind of track with me on this just a little bit. So at the end of fiscal year 2021, our ending fund balance on debt service was $62 million. Our total collections for fiscal year 2022, this school year, 176 and a little change, $176 million. Now let's look at our expenditures for this year. You can see that our principal and interest, or our payment, is about $156 million. If you combine those two line items, we did a June defeasance, we did an August defeasance. For total out the door, and you won't see that defeasance under expenditures. You'll see it that other category in your audit. But total out the door, $195 million. So our ending fund balance, we are projecting about $43 million in the debt service, the debt service fund balance. And our requirement, Amber, in the audit is 10% of the payment. We've set our requirement for what you want that to be, minimum fund balance, at 10% of the payment. So if our payment right now is $156 million, 10% of that is oh, and she's got that down there. I didn't see that. Okay. So total collections for fiscal year 2023, we're projecting at $203.7 million, a payment of $154 before any defeasance or anything like that, just what we're projecting. The fund balance requirement for us to have on that payment would be the $15 million. So we have $77 million available for defeasance. And I have a conference call with John Martin tomorrow. He sent me some of our we have some wonderful opportunities next year on this side of the house. So let's just stay there for a minute and go, yay, this is the best this is the best slide in the whole in the whole budget presentation. No, I get excited about it, but anyway. So that's that. So a couple of other things, miscellaneous. You will be receiving in your board update. I'm sorry, it's probably inappropriate, but I get excited about that. And you will be seeing your board update this week. Our plan for the student nutrition budget. You also are going to be approving, hopefully, for a bump in pay for those workers as a part of that plan. We'll be finalizing our revenue calculations for fiscal year 2023 based on any updates from CAD, and then we'll finalize any expenditure estimates. As you know, we will be taking that debt management policy at the time of budget, and then we'll be reviewing that with the board each year to review the policy, approve underwriters, and then preview our possible resolutions for sales, defeasements, or refunds. And Dr. Rapp, you may want to jump in here, but we wanted to put these legislative issues here on the slide. You know, the comptroller is indicating a nearly $27 billion surplus in the most recent estimate for the state. So we know some of the topics that are going to be in the 88th will be increased property tax relief. So that'll be on the horizon. School safety, and we are maybe going to see that revenue for fiscal year 2023 to support additional school safety requirements. A possible lot of chatter out there about a basic allotment increase. Now remember, when you do that, any time in the statute, the way that it's, or the law that it's written right now, you have some requirements for salary increases at 30% of that increase of the basic allotment. And then that increase that I spoke about earlier about the yield for the enrichment pennies. A lot of chatter out there because the Austin values have just skyrocketed. So I don't know, Dr. Rapp, did you want to say anything about, no, you're good? I will pause there before I turn it over to Ms.
Okay, we'll go around the horn. We're going to start with Dr. Bonner tonight.
Mr. Miller, my head is swimming, so could I defer to my colleagues until the end? If not, because they may get most of what I'm wanting to ask about anyway.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Hassan?
I'm with you, buddy. My head is swimming too. I don't
All
know
right.
if it's because of this or something else, but I think I can pull out a question, though. Is that okay? Mr. Miller?
If you think you can pull out a question,
Okay.
go for it.
I just heard you talking. So, Dr. Rapp, on the your slide about the staffing and the staffing levels per 1,000 students.
Yep.
So initially, I think that's great that we are lower than our comparative districts.
Yes.
However, and you know, in an organization as big as we are, you're probably going to have areas that could use a few more people, probably could take away from some areas. Was there anything that, you know, any other areas besides, I mean, and we're having a hard time filling positions right now too, but,
Right.
But, you know, I mean, is there any particular area besides special ed, because we keep trying, you know, you could probably never have enough special ed aides, you know, but are there any other things like that that popped out at you that think, maybe we should add some more people here, or?
The only main area we really had to address, and you've seen that reflected in your budget, is CTE, other than special ed. And of course, with the state spending requirement, the way it's set up, the more students you put in CTE, the more money the state gives you, but that also increases your spending requirement. And it's just like with anything else, there's only so many things you can update. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, one of the ways to meet that spending requirement definitely was in looking at staffing. And you do have to plan accordingly, because like I said, every staffing unit you add that you increase students in, it gets you back into this, well, are we going to then be able to meet the state spending requirement? So special ed and CTE are definitely two of the areas that are reflected in this budget. You know, one of the things that we can continue to share with you all is a deeper dive into, you know, how those other districts vary from us and in what they're putting, where they're putting those positions. But I would say the challenge, as you've already articulated with SPED, is definitely one of, even if you were to do additional increases, the way this staffing cycle is, it can be very challenging to find those.
So when you're talking about CTE, that also reminds me, you know, back when I first started, you know, on the board, we had wait lists and things for people to get into certain programs. I mean, how are we with that now? Are we doing better?
Yes, so we are ultimately doing better, and y'all are going to be seeing an update from Jason Cooper, I think October, thank you. And we're also going to discuss at that time as well the Tech East expansion. And so where we have waiting lists and do we want to address some of that through how we're planning for the Tech East expansion. But yes, we have made progress on those wait lists. We made progress in two ways. We've made progress in the space that we opened up at Tech West, and we've made progress by adding some additional units in certain areas as well to address the need. Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
This is a great presentation, Ms. Maloney. Thank you for your first budget prep with us, and really not that long, that you've been here to get all this together. So this is great. Thank you very much.
In addition to everything else we talked about Monday, to do this as well. So, Ms. Sells.
I was just curious, does some of the staffing issues have to do with neighboring districts' policies in school, limiting school sizes? Or was it really staffing? Yeah. I mean, did we look at that issue? Like, their policies of limiting school sizes, well, if they limit school sizes and then they have so many more campuses, then they're going to have, just by staffing model, they're going to have more.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. There's definitely, the more you divide up your services, the more buildings you build, the more you lose efficiency. Absolutely. So there is an efficiency that we have in the sizes that we run. And, we've heard over time when people pull up, even I'll use as an example what TEA puts on the web, on the internet about our budgets. It can be stated that possibly we're spending more money on certain schools than others, right? Well, one of the things you see is that some of our smaller elementary schools look like we're spending a lot of money on them, and that is the efficiency we lost. In that smaller elementary school, we have a full-time principal, a full-time AP, a full-time office staff, a full-time counselor. Not every classroom is going to run at 22-1 because you lose that, and that skews the way that they put out their data, which is always why, this is a great time to give just a data caution to people. Anytime you go to TEA's website, you need to always have an asterisk in your thinking of, you don't know how the backstory on where those numbers are coming from. But we definitely realize some efficiencies that other districts have chosen different models don't.
And I appreciate that, and I think that helps us as a board make more conservative financial decisions for our taxpayers, for our community, without a loss of services to our students. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was maybe some of that.
I'll give just one more compliment on the efficiency thing. And then I'm, of course, I've been in pep rally mode, so that puts me in this real preachy, real preachy state. But, we do a really good job by also consolidating and having certain places where at the elementary level we have our special education units. And while I know that can be hard on families, that, why don't we have every service at every single location? When you choose your locations in your feeders wisely, again, you gain some efficiency, and you gain not only efficiency in staff, but you gain better service because you gain a more robust structure to your classroom, and you're able to maximize the staff that you're able to put with kids. So I just think we should give a compliment to our special ed department as they do such a good job really intentionally being careful about where we place our units and how and why.
Thank you. I appreciate that last statement a lot as somebody who just ran for re-election. The other statements or the other questions, and my head is reeling too, and I think I need to just look at some of these more closely. At what time or will we decide? I know that you were excited about the possibility of using fund balance for the defeasements. Can you explain, I guess, and just remind me the use of the fund balance? What would be our options if we're looking to doing some other things in the district? Can you just kind of explain for our just information why we might do a defeasement rather than put that money toward a refresh or something? Or would we look at all that in a holistic approach in making those decisions?
Okay, one thing, and this does get confusing because your bond projects are over in another fund, and we've got some of those that are dwindling down that you don't see anymore, but that's in that 600 series. The 599, the debt service fund, interest and sinking, and I like to call it debt service because that's truly what it is. It's debt service. It's to make your payment. It's to do refunding opportunities that would lower long-range taxes for your taxpayer, or it's to pay off debt early. So they're really, make no mistake about it. That's the only thing you really can do with your debt service fund.
Thank you, and thank you for confirming that, because sometimes it is easy to look and see that money's there and wonder why we're not doing it for these other things, but knowing that we are restricted in its use. So this is why we might be making these decisions.
And I think even another clarification is keeping that tax rate where it is. If we lowered it, that would be less of savings to the taxpayer over time than paying it down early or having better refunding opportunities. So that's a message you have to get out there too, because the sooner you pay things off, the better.
Thank you. And then I think lastly, and I may come around with other questions later, but I think lastly is that one slide, and thank you for providing it. It's the slide on page 10, slide 20, with the allocation, the mandated expenditure, and the 21-22 expenditures.
Yes, ma'am.
I am just, and this is probably for our community more than anything, is that on the mandated expenditures, I would hate to see a world where we went to just spending the mandated expenditures for some of these services. But that's a reality. That's where we could land as a board if we pulled back. But I can't imagine the damage to our students in special education and the opportunities lost for our gifted and our talented students. We do a great job of raising talented students in this district. And I think if you are in a community and you're a parent and you've never advocated for public education and your child has received any of these services, I think this is your year. We would love for you to partner with us in advocating for all children. So, and that's just a statement, and that's all I have right now.
Love the statement, Ms. Sells. We could use all the parental community support we could get this session. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, staff. Great job. A couple questions. The rumor mill of the three golden pennies in the Austin, is that just those three, or are they talking just those three?
Oh, that's a great question. No, it would be for the 5 we already have as well. So when we start to track this in the spring and those kind of runs start happening, we'll bring that to you in our budget update, that, here's what we would be projecting on the current golden pennies that we have. Oh, great question.
I love that. If they do it.
The golden pennies right now, they're worth about
98 something.
no, but like what for our district isn't it?
Just shy of $4 million a penny.
Yeah. So it would be right now currently if we had those three, it'd be another 12 million.
Which is basically the cost of 1% of salary increases for the district? Was that? No?
It would have covered our salary increase.
See? That'd be lovely. Okay, awesome sauce. Hopefully they'll do that. I don't know that they will. Then I had a question on the page 12, slide 24. Actually, and 23. Are all of these expenses in the current projection expenses for next year? Including the 400 extra K for stupid insurance?
Yes. Oh,
not that.
That's the only item.
Do we need to add that one?
That's
too?
the only item that's not there, and so we would have to update. And one thing I will say, as we, in the next couple of weeks, you'll get your whole book that comes at the 29th, probably next week, that'll show by function all the detail on that. But that's the only thing that's not, because we're still in negotiation stages
Okay.
Hopefully we'll have it tomorrow so we can get it in board book for Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's helpful. And hold on, I know I had one more question. Maybe I didn't. I had 2 flags on that one. I guess that's. No, I did have another question on the property value study. I'm not going to make you answer it now. I'll email the question because I'm trying to get more, to wrap my head around the $1 million cost and how much we get from it. And so I don't expect you to spit out numbers on your seat right there. So I'm going to ask the question in an email later just for more information on how that all works and how much money we would get back on all that.
Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciate the work.
What a great presentation. So as somebody who just sat through a financial statement review before I came, very comprehensive. My first comment was regarding the fund balance policy, the 3 months, I believe it was, expenses. And you had mentioned that that's not in a policy, it's in the audit. And I was just wanting to say I agree with you. I think it needs to be codified in a policy. So I don't know how we do that as a board, but I think that's something that we need to move on.
Ms. Taylor, I believe it is actually board policy.
Okay.
Yes.
NCE local? Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that makes me feel good. Thank you. The other question I had, sorry, sometimes I can't read my own writing. So, of course, it looked all bad, and I was trying to pull away what I took from Dr. Rapp's, spirited discussion today at Marcus. But when you were going through everything, it sort of felt all bad to me, maybe, as an accountant. But my question is around, and I don't know what slide this is. Let me see. Slide 26. Where you have anticipated increase for fiscal year 22, are you saying that these amounts are the increase, or is this the total budget item? I guess I wasn't clear.
And it is on
Page 26 with the graphics. Yeah, slide 26. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
the all of the amounts for?
Yes,
okay.
across the top.
And so you're asking if those are,
Is that increase or is that total? I guess I wasn't sure. And is there a way to see what it was last year as a comparison? Am I asking
for
that
each of-
correctly?
so
yes, like
what the
fuels,
increase was
yes,
last year?
to see what the totals were as compared, or is this the total? I guess is this a total or this is the actual increase?
This would have been addition to the expenditures from prior year to this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then is the breakout that you have under, is that the each dollar amount by line item, I guess, for lack of a better word?
Yes.
Okay. Property value study, I think Ms. Haslett talked about that. I guess I may be confused about what it is because I thought the property value study that we were doing, we only paid out if they were receiving some type of contingent fee if they receive money, or is this something different?
We're budgeting the expenditure based on if we don't receive anything, we won't have that expenditure.
Okay, so it's just an estimate of what they
Absolutely.
could get as a contingent fee. Okay, and not a true, we have to pay them.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. My next question was regarding, just regarding the weight equipment upgrades. Is that, I guess, every weight room across?
Yeah, so that's something that we would definitely bring back before you. So in September is really the time where I'm going to discuss what we saw on those facility
Okay.
walks. We're working on that report right now. So what we did was we simply included an estimate in this
Okay.
budget. We would obviously talk further about what does that look like, who needs what. It varies according to weight room. But so there would be much more conversation about that.
Gotcha,
Just
but
went
this
ahead
is
and
just like a total
just-
estimate for everything that
Yeah.
you may have seen. Okay. Next question, and some of this, again, thanks for indulging me. I am new to the board. So some of it is that. With respect to nutrition, and I guess is that the food service fund? I guess I was trying to understand now that parents are, paying again for lunches. If there's extra money there, does that money cover the salaries of the cafeteria workers or the food service workers, or does that still come out of general fund?
The child nutrition budget is its own separate fund.
Right.
And we actually have some write-ups in the board update for this time. So traditionally in Lewisville ISD pre-COVID, the child nutrition fund was pretty much almost significantly funded with local
Self-funded.
revenue, people paying for lunches,
Right.
things like that. And we have a small, or not as high of a percentage of free and reduced meals, but they get a reimbursement from the federal government based on their meals. During COVID, all of the students were eating with
Right.
and not having to pay.
Correct.
And so what we've seen over time, and I think I've talked about it in the financials since I've been here, we see all federal revenue. So we just see, and that is not normal for a Lewisville ISD, because usually you would be operating more on your local revenue. It would be higher than your federal revenue. So coming back off of that, and think about students. I think about high school students who never participated in the child, they never ate. They brought their lunch, went to lunch, ordered, whatever. If a slice of pizza is free, you're going to go get it, and then we get a reimbursement for that. So we've got these these revenues that have come in, and a staff shortage as well. So we have this huge fund balance, if you will, in that fund. And we are required by the federal government and our Texas Department of Agriculture to do a spend down plan. And that's part of what we were trying to do with, or we are trying to do with, these incentives for our staff and some compensation.
Okay. And the compensation does come out of there. I think
yes,
that's the
ma'am.
part I was unclear on. Okay.
I would just note on that too. It's, this is one that I think people think that there's just certain students just use free and subsidized, and certain students pay. There are a lot of kids in free and subsidized lunches when you get to middle and high school that throw their lunches out and buy lunch. That's the reality of what happens. But as we discussed the other night, we're very restricted on how to use this money. And so, when kids buy sushi, right, sushi's not covered in free and subsidized lunches, right, these specialty foods. So it helps build that fund.
Okay. And I knew that it was restricted. Again, I didn't know if salaries, that was my question, came for the food service
From the
workers.
240, yes.
Okay. And then my last one is probably more just a general budget question. It sounds like our student population is decreasing. Are all of our elementary schools operating at capacity, and is there some opportunity to review consolidations? And I know nobody wants to hear any of that, but just looking in the future, I see a fund balance that if nothing happens, looks like something could happen where it could not be there. We're constantly spending out of the fund balance, so you have to ask hard questions on how you can potentially save money. So that's my reasoning behind the question.
The demographer report that's provided is really where we place all that conversation about school capacity.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the comment I would make on CE local real quick, I think Ms. Maloney's observation about our CE local policy, and to your question, Ms. Taylor, is that it doesn't look like it specifies the amount of days that you want to have an operating. It comes up in your audit every year when they present to you all, and it may be housed in another board policy somewhere else, but typically CE local is where you keep that kind of information. So
Can I say I would encourage us to look another policy, because
Yes.
I specifically remember raising my hand for it because it was an issue. So it may be in policy, just not in CE policy.
Yeah.
So.
We will absolutely take a look at that. I think her review is just typically your CE local kind of keeps all that information housed together.
And,
Okay.
and on that, to jump on Jenny's, I recall the previous amount was $45 million, so that may be coupled together in some other policy that we're not gathering.
And we've talked about this as a board, because the board has to agree on what that policy is, I believe. or what you're going to regulate, but we have discussed it before.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. Great presentation.
I'm up. Okay, do you want to go first? Okay. So on page 8, slide 15, I would really appreciate a year-to-year on those revenues and where they come from, like what they were last year and what we're projecting them, what they were.
Which one are you on, Ms.
Page
President?
8, slide 15. General fund revenue assumptions for fiscal year 23, and you put other local revenue, 15.2 million. Yes. I'm real curious exactly where that is, where it has been, and what you're projecting. That's my big ask for the evening.
To look at those line items individually?
Yes. Yeah, I'm real curious what the tuition was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can put a 5-year trend for those line items together. That'd be
great.
Very easy.
That would be great. And then next on my list is, and I think it was answered, but the fuel, the $3 million in fuel on page 12, slide 24, that $3 million, that's a total. That's not a $3 million increase.
No, that's a total.
That's a total. I'm just making sure that I understood that correctly. And then I did want to speak a little bit about staffing, and that we actually received great kudos from our audits in that we staff to student need. We don't staff to a number. We staff to a student need. And I'm very proud, quite frankly, that is how we do that in the district. And then on page 14, page 20, slide 28, I know you're going to talk to Mr. Martin, but I would ask if we could do even more defeasance in August, because I do know you can do that for the coming year and the previous year, and if that would bring us any additional savings instead of waiting to do them later on. We could do it actually, do you know what I mean, in this fiscal year as well, and we could, I don't know what those numbers are, but I would ask that you look into that when speaking with Mr. Martin.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Dr. Bonner.
Well, firstly, thank you for letting me gather my thoughts. On slide 16, I'm ask an obvious question. I think everybody in the room knows it, but so the district has dropped its tax rate 18.5 cents or 17.7% over the last 5 years, looks like 4 years. Other taxing entities have done that as well because of the way the legislature has compressed county, city, and school district revenue. But, you know, I see my house taxes going up every year. Even when I appeal them, that's why I do appeal them. So why is that? Why are my house taxes going up, Ms. Maloney, if you're telling me that the tax rate has dropped? What's going on? That's a sincere question. Who's doing it?
So the compression.
Yeah, why are my taxes going up if the rate's dropped?
Because your values are going up.
My values are going up. Who's assessing those values? How are those values being set?
I'm going to take this one.
Okay,
So
thank you, Dr. Rapp.
ultimately, the Denton County Appraisal District that determines your tax rate, as you see the property values going up, the property values are the determiner of the more taxes that you pay. And interestingly enough, we talked about this with the last meeting we had with the Community Budget Advisory Committee about how could we help tell the story, because people think the school district is raising the tax rate and that's why their taxes are going up, and that is factually inaccurate.
So we can tell the story right here, right?
Yes.
There's an algorithm that the district appraisal, the Denton. Thank you. The Denton Central Appraisal District uses every year to assess the market value of my home. And despite our tax rate going down, and despite City of Lewisville tax rate going down, and Denton County tax rate going down, my taxes continue to go up. So if you're out there watching this, if you're upset about your taxes going up, it's not Lewisville ISD. Thank you for letting me get that off my chest. Slide 18, Ms. Maloney. That red line is concerning, and certainly it's attendant to House Bill 3. You know, in the past, we would have our attorneys collect those taxes unpaid, and we have a really good, Linebarger has a really good success rate at that, 99% or whatever. So while that $40 million was not collected last year, it will be collected in the future if all things remain the same with our tax attorneys. Is that? Am I missing something there?
No, that is incorrect, because it's based on the levy. And, I mean, there is some room there. As far as the levy that was set for the M&O collections, which would be current and delinquent, or I'm not delinquent, late.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those, we have a 99.5% collection rate.
But that's not what this is.
That is what, yes. Yeah.
So if we continue to collect at the same rate, we will receive most of that $40 million back in the future.
No, I don't think that we will receive that. I think that we overstated the levy to begin with.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I didn't understand.
That would be great, but
yeah. Okay.
No.
Thank you for disabusing me of that. And I really like Ms. Sell's statement a little bit ago on the delta between the allocation and the mandated expenditures in those programs. I'm going to go a little bit further than she did, though, and I'm going to ask Dr. Rapp to conjure up what our classrooms would look like if all we spent was the state mandated amounts, because I believe that our public needs to know that. They need to know that we are spending on the order of 1.5 to over 8 times what's being allocated and mandated to us. That I believe they need to know what those classrooms will look like in special ed, in gifted and talented, in our school safety program, which is 8 times what we're given. What's that going to look like if we, quote, right-sized spending back to what the state requires us to spend? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so thank you, Dr. Bonner. Ultimately, you know, if we were to only spend what we receive from both of course, you see the state allotment on SPED, but the federal allotment, because let's talk about how IDEA ultimately originates with the federal government. We would have much higher student-to-teacher ratios in our classrooms with students who have the most needs. So you would have much fewer aides. You would have many more students all in one classroom in order to try to serve based on what we would get there. And that money that they give us is so small compared to what we spend. You would not see the assistive technology that we have. So when you think about the amount of the way that education has changed and the resources that we have to educate kids today, people do not want their kids educated with 1980s technology. So we would have to rewind the clock, and we would have to not have some of the technological devices that we have out in our classrooms that are helping our students who have communication needs, to help our students who have behavioral needs. We would need to dial all of those services back down. And when you look at the GT allotment, we would not have GT teachers.
Right.
Let's just pause on that for a second. The only GT services that would be provided would be by the general ed classroom teacher, right? So you look at the amount of money we're spending more. Let's talk about dyslexia for a second, and then I'll just stop there if that's enough conjuring. But for dyslexia services, you would not have the number of dyslexia specialized teachers and therapists that we have on staff. I'll just let that sink in. The caseloads of the people that we could afford would be so large, the amount of time that any one student would get would not be acceptable. So.
And so the reason for that question was not to cause alarm for our staff. We are not suggesting that we're going to do that. But I appreciate you painting the picture of what it could look like. And because Lewisville ISD is a large district, we have opportunities and, to your point earlier, economies of scale to offer these programs. But again, I think the public needs to know that we are spending 2 times what we have to as required by the state. And the other thing I wanted to say, I'm a math guy. The excess we're spending is about our recapture anticipated next year. So if we just did away with that, we'd solve our recapture problem, right? All right. Do what?
And more than the state funding we get.
Yeah, yeah. And then I guess the last question, then I'll get off my high horse, is Mom used to tell me that. Thank you for the note on the opportunity for defeasance, $77 million, and to a point made earlier, maybe there's some things we could do next year as opposed to this year, but just a lot of opportunity. It's always good to have ready cash, right? Always good. So thank you for that note. I hadn't thought about that, so thank you. And that's it, Mr. Miller.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bonner. So I really, Ms. Maloney, thank you for this presentation. I don't have a lot of questions. Not going to ask for, all the detailed kind of line items that we would get, the 099 and all those other things. A couple things I would say that have brought some things to light for me. One is I encourage the board to go back and look at Mr. Gardner's report. I think Mr. Kaj sent this on 610. I mentioned it the other night that I looked at that. I think that'll give a good view of capacity across the district. This will create some concern for some people, but I think it's worth listening to what Mr. Gardner has to say and what he's projecting. Second thing is, as I'm sitting here listening, and we've had some references to potential legislative input, including with the aforementioned Denton County Appraisal District potentially. There's some numbers that would be interesting to me. What would the per student cost be in the allocation we get from the state if we stripped out everything that we do? For example, special ed services. So what I'm getting to is, what would a voucher look like? We strip out special ed services. We strip out gifted and talented. We strip out transportation allotment. We strip out facilities. What's our air conditioning costs, our maintenance costs, our insurance costs, which was mentioned earlier, our water costs. If we exclude our career tech programs, if we exclude safety and security. And so in other words, all we're talking about is, if we play to this notion that what education simply needs to be is a refocus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. So if we get rid of all these, what is the true cost? And then there's your voucher price if there were to be a voucher. And it's not going to be $6,000, right? But we know that it's not going to fund a holistic education. So I think there's some value in just kind of taking a look at what would pure instruction be versus all these other costs that we bear the burden on. And I personally think it's going to get, and Ms. Hass and I have talked about this, to where there's a constitutional violation that exists in these options that are going to be presented in the legislative session. So I'd like to see us kind of look at that. The other thing is, if tax money is used to do certain things and not follow local government code in procurement processes, I think it's a constitutional violation. So, in other words, let's just say that we get $6,000, $7,000 a student, covers our air conditioning, our special ed programs, our transportation allotment, all these other things, and then we have to go through this very onerous and long procurement process, and the options that are provided don't have to do that. We are now in a territory where it's not fair trade. So it would be just interesting to the extent that you, under the efficiency, remember the lawsuits had efficiency fighters and access and equity fighters, right? So under efficiency, that's what they're looking at. They're saying we could be more efficient with more competition. The notion here is that let's look at this as our legislative agenda and the impact it would have if we were to do these things and really be fair. Because if that's what we're talking about, is being fair and helping kids get out of underperforming schools, then let's show them what the cost of doing that is. And I like Dr. Bonner's point of, let's just show them what it costs if we just had the basic services, right? So with that said, and I want to make sure insurance is in there, because that's another thing that was a big burden for us to carry, right? Because even if these vouchers were to take place, they still have to provide a system of efficient, free public schools. These buildings don't go away. The facilities don't go away. The transportation doesn't go away. The special ed doesn't go away. The inclusion teachers don't go away. The band instruments that are purchased all have to go through a certain procurement process. So just a thought for consideration. With that said, because of some things that were brought up, I think that it would be wise for us to go to executive session for just a moment. I apologize to staff. We'll do this in less than 10 minutes. Invite Ms. Maloney and our attorney Deanne. So we'll take this opportunity to move to discuss the discussion into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 as provided by law and our publicly posted agenda. The time is now 7:20 p.m. Okay, we're going to reconvene into open session at 8:05 p.m. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Rapp.
Thank you, President Miller. Of course, we're going to go in now to a compensation and benefits update, and Ms. Smith is going to take us through that. A couple of points before we get started. One, it's been a while since we approved compensation because of how early we did that, and we're so pleased, again, just for your support in approving that compensation early, because we know that that helped us be competitive as we competed for jobs this spring. Secondly, we know that, as Ms. Maloney shared on Monday night about property taxes and the update, that we're only able to make as good of decisions about compensation as our budget as we get certified tax rolls from the appraisal district. So as we go into this section and we talk about compensation decisions that you asked us to continue to bring forward and put on your radar, we are only able to make those kind of decisions for staff when we know exactly what our revenue is going to be. And of course, we know that at this time, it's been hard to project that due to getting a certified estimate from the appraisal district. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Smith to talk through some compensation pieces this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Rapp. As she shared, if you recall, on April 11th, we took action and passed our increases, our raises. I just want to say personally, when Dr. Bonner brought that forward, that was a great idea, and it really did allow us to be competitive and to reach out there. And while we're absolutely living through the shortage, it is a difference maker, and I just appreciate the courage that you all took as a board in allowing us to step out there. The other thing it did, in passing it as early as we did, it allowed Tim and in my office to send compensation letters out to our staff before the end of the year where they knew exactly what they were going to be making this year. And we've not been able to do that before, and that is a big difference maker too, because everybody knew where they stood. So I appreciate that. One of the pieces you asked about, because when we did pass our salaries, we didn't know what a lot of other districts were doing. So I've brought this information back to you for you to see now that we're nearing the end of the salary increase season. And you can see that we were very competitive. We gave a 4% from the midpoint to teachers, and our other campus staff, we gave a 3% to everyone else. You can look and see there were other districts that gave 4%. There are certainly a couple that gave 3%. Garland did give a 5% from the midpoint, but I will tell you, we'll see in just a minute, they're an outlier in that area. But we are very competitive. One thing I will point out before I move from this slide, there are 2 items that were remaining from the April conversation that we were going to bring back and discuss tonight. One of them is a retention payment, and so you can see on this slide in our neighboring districts who are giving retention payments and what those look like. They look very different across, everybody has a version of what that looks like, but they do differ from district to district. So as I mentioned, we are competitive. Garland is the only district that is ahead of us in a starting teacher salary, and it is less than $1,000. So our starting teacher salary in Lewisville, I'm quite proud of, at $59,175 for a teacher with 0 years of experience. You can see that we're ahead of all of our neighboring districts with the exception of Garland in this salary, and once again, that's kudos to you as the board. So there were 2 things that we had that I told you we would bring back for discussion. The first one I mentioned just a few minutes ago is the retention payment. The last couple of years when we've done the retention payment, what we've done is in November we've given $500 to every employee that was hired before September 1st. We give that out typically right as we're going into Thanksgiving. When I presented this to you back earlier in the spring, I presented a second option because we could move to a more of a retention payment. So if in the option 2, the first example I gave is if we were to give 2 payments, one of those being in September, we would only give that retention payment to people that were returning from the 21-22 school year. Given the fact that we've had 1,500 resignations this past school year, that will tell you that that number would go down a little because we have fewer people returning. But that's how I presented it, as if we went with option 2 and had 2 retention payments. One payment would go in September, another one would go out in January to recognize and award people who returned from winter break. Last year, we lost several, not only at-will employees, but also teachers who left during the winter break. And so that was the rationale behind that thinking. The other thing that I brought for you earlier to discuss was a Title I campus stipend pay. I suggested that we give everyone that works at a Title campus a $1,000 stipend. We looked to see if we could pay for that through Title funds. We simply do not have the Title funds to support that. I do want to say to you, just to put this out there, 77% of our current open positions are teachers on Title campuses. And 64% of our current open aid positions are at one of our Title campuses. So it would be wrong for me to not say to you, I still think the value in the stipend is there. But I also was paying attention to Paige's report, and I understand that we are facing a deficit budget. When I originally presented this, my suggestion was that we pay it out in June after the school year so that we're only awarding people that have stayed for the entire school year instead of that we hired them and they leave. I talked to Paige about this, and I definitely believe with where we are in the budget right now, I would not recommend moving this forward now. But what I would say that we might consider is listing it as a consideration in the budget so that when we get to January or February and we have a better idea then of where we are in the budget, then we might could come back and review this, because I think this stipend has value, and I think it would tell our staff at stipend campuses that at our Title campuses that we understand the challenges that they're facing, but I just don't think I feel like we should recommend this right now other than to keep it as a consideration. So our recommendation right now is to not move any of these forward, but I would certainly be open to your discussion, and that isn't because we don't believe they're valuable pieces of our compensation package. I do think they're valuable. I just know where we're sitting with the budget, and I know what each of these items would cost us. With that, I'll take questions.
Thank you. It's just between her and I. Okay, Allison, I think you're up. Oh, wait. Okay, yeah.
I thought you told me to do it.
First time by choice.
That's right. So in slide 24 of the previous presentation, that those monies aren't included in that staffing cost. So it would be addition to the budget as it currently stands. Okay.
Yes.
So, well, since Ms. Smith is not recommending we go forward, I want to address anything but two quick thoughts. One, we would have to approve the Title I stipend prior to the entrance into contract. So that's what you're getting at, right? Make a commitment to it and then determine if we can pay it in January, something like that.
So we build in now that we would bring it back for a consideration at a January or February time period when we know where our budget is sitting more, and then we would be able to address it at that time.
And address it before the contract starts.
Yes.
So that it's an allowable expense.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And it would not be creditable compensation
Wouldn't
for
be TR, yeah.
TRS, because it would be a one-time thing after the contract starts, so we would have to codify that in the agenda language.
Okay. Title campus staff absolutely deserve this additional compensation due to the difficult nature of their jobs. I would hope all our staff would agree with that, whether they were to receive this stipend or not. And I like your idea of waiting until a future date after we determine what the budget outcomes are going to be. So thank you.
You done? Okay. So I appreciate this. I agree. I think that I do like the idea of compensating the Title I staff and those percentages, especially. When you said that, I was about to ask. Okay, so what are 77% of are open at Title campuses? That says a lot. Okay, so as far as the retention payments, so I guess my only concern with not doing one, so we paid out the $500 and the $250 to part-timers. We did that, right before Christmas?
We usually release that in November.
In November. And I guess your point was it didn't really stop a lot of people from leaving at the end of the year for sure, but you did still have some winter people as well, right?
So the way we've done it in the last 2 years, people appreciate that payment, and you all know that, and
Yeah.
they love the timing of November. So it is very much appreciated. But when we look at it as a true retention stipend, which I think in the shortage, that becomes more and more important, a retention payment should happen right as they return from these specific time periods, because the way we've had it set up the last 2 years, it has been a one-time payment that everybody appreciates, but that's current staff. As long as they were hired on by September 1st and still here in November, they got that payment. Those several people then could leave at winter break. I mean, it didn't keep them, it didn't retain them. And so my thinking on this is if we were to continue this type of payment, which I know y'all, I like this type of payment, but turn it into more of a retention payment where we're really rewarding people for coming back.
I agree. I think maybe when you bring back the thing for Title I, we could also look at this, the 500, 250 to award it at the end of the school year. I mean, I don't know. That's just an idea.
Ms. Sells?
Well, I love the payment in November. It was one thing that we got, and I think I brought this up when this discussion occurred a couple of years ago, that was something that we received at the City of Dallas, and it was always a welcoming thing in November. And even though I understand that it's not a true retention, and we have kind of shifted because of just the day we live in, I do like that November, but I understand that, and I appreciate your boldness as a leader to be able to sit here and say, based on what you see and the facts, that this isn't something that you would bring forward. But I would like to go ahead and place it for consideration once we know the actual budget of it. I did do some quick calculations, though, just FYI. Last legislative session, I think our teachers were promised about $5,000 apiece. Based on the $27 billion surplus that we have in the state, we have 320,000 teachers in the state, 80,000 additional support staff, for 400,000 for those that are in public education. That $27 billion would give them 67,500 that I think maybe our legislators could find that actual 5,000 they were promised last legislative session out of. So I think that might be a good start for truly, if you say you want to serve kids and care about kids, start in their classrooms with their teachers.
I agree.
I have a question rather than a Good TEA math problem. For the retention payments in the past, has the $500 been all staff?
So it's $250 for full, if they're full-time, part-time. So if they're working a full year, but at part-time status, it's
include-
$250.
Does it include teachers and staff?
Yes, it's all staff.
Okay, and this might not be accepted by other, I'm going to ask a question. Could we potentially think about, since we're a shortage of teachers more than others, could we consider doing a $250 just for teachers and aides rather than all staff? If that's something that would help retain the teachers, I actually like the January idea better. Could we consider potentially doing something that wouldn't affect the budget as much, but might help us retain teachers? Something I would like us to mull around, since we are having a retention problem like we've never experienced before.
We could certainly bring you the numbers broken down by categories for your review, because we could break it down by what it would cost for teachers,
Right.
what it would cost for campus paraprofessionals, what it would cost for other district staff.
Okay. It just might be something worth at least looking at, just because of the retention problems we're having.
I agree. I think it is also an area, though, that we need to, I would suggest that we also look at, we're short our cafeteria managers, and that they all get the same amount. So if they're a full-time cafeteria person, they're getting that same $500, but it means a lot.
That makes sense, absolutely. Anything that you would recommend that we could consider, just so that we could get a little bit more data, I would greatly
Absolutely. We
appreciate.
can break it down by category and just look at it.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, normally if we would have done the campus stipend for Title I, is it the stipend normally TRSable? Is that a word?
If we're doing it as a one-time payment, no.
If it's included in the salary of the contract, though, can we do it, is that ever a thing? Or is it always only just a stipend? How does that work?
If you have the stipend that is approved in the compensation package that's approved in the budget, and it's
Then it is
budgeted for,
TRSable.
it becomes credible. Am I right? Payroll? It's
like a regular routine.
right.
Okay.
Even if we, but Gretchen, if we gave it out one time at the end of the year, but it was in the budget.
Like a retention, it was like a approved stipend.
Okay.
In
So there is-
approved in the
there is a
budget.
difference.
Has to be approved in the budget.
So normally, if we would normally have a stipend, it would normally be tier, but today you were considering potentially having that line item so we could evaluate it later that would not be TRSable. I love the idea of looking at that later, because I definitely agree with Dr. Bonner. Those teachers, especially after the pandemic and HB 4545 and all the shenanigans, I think those teachers are working even harder. Can we have a list of districts in our area that do have a Title I? I would greatly appreciate that, just so I could. That's all the questions I have. Thank you very much.
Ms. Taylor?
I just want just a general comment about the compensation plans, and thank you for laying this out again, the effect of the approval of the board for the raises. It feels good to not be at the bottom and to be either, at the top or close to the top. So I just wanted to note that. With respect to the, I think it's conservatively prudent, which is a word I just made up, with what you just brought forth about, where we are from a budget standpoint, that it may make sense to wait and look at these items. I do want them to be brought back, hopefully. We'll be doing better with the budget. And I just want to say, I really like the idea of the Title I teachers receiving stipends because, as some of you know, Mackenzie actually, my daughter, attends a Title I school, and I'm up there all the time. And I feel like, not to take away from other teachers because I honestly don't know, but they have a lot on their plate and they do a lot of work, and some things you would think would be outside of school or teaching, and they do all that too. So I think it's important for us to recognize that all that they put into it, all that they put into teaching at Title I schools. So I definitely would like to see that come back. My question is around the stipend, suggested stipend for Title I teachers. I wanted to know if we had any comparative data for other schools, other districts. Are they doing something similar with their Title I teachers?
So I don't think so. Tim?
Oh, sorry.
Tim, did we
I'm hungry.
did
so.
we run any of Data Central data on title? It was just something that we started discussing as we noticed that there are more openings on title campuses and more challenges about hiring at title campuses. But we have a data central that we can pull if there's that information in it. And if not, we can pick up the phone and call surrounding districts and find out.
Those are my only questions and comments.
Well, I agree with waiting until January because we'll know exactly how we ended up for this year in December 1st. So that's always a good place to start, to see how we finished, if we finished how we started, if we have any money left over. I am in alignment with Ms. Hassett and Ms. Taylor. I would prefer it be a permanent stipend, so it was available for TRS. We give stipends for all kinds of things in this district, for people with master's degrees, for people with PhDs, and so if we're looking for a specific kind of staff member, I think it just should be part of the salary, and I guess I would look for that coming forward if we end up doing this for this year, but I would look for that moving forward to see what that looks like for, I'm going to say it, the 23-24 budget. The only other thing I would say is that we have to also be careful about stipending everything. We have STEM teachers who work an extra hour a day because of the way the day is scheduled. We have BIC teachers, who is also another hard position to fill. So I want to make sure that we're being thoughtful when we talk about stipends. But I do agree with Ms. Hassett and Ms. Taylor that I'd like to see what that looks like going forward on that. And I appreciate the prudence in waiting until after, we've audited this year.
Mr. Miller, in that line, do we have to, can I ask a question? If the consideration is brought back, is it only are we committing to the $1,000? Or if our budget is better but not wonderful for the $1,000, will you be able to bring it back at that point, maybe at a $500 level or a $750 level?
We should be able to, because we're just bringing it back as a consideration. I've given you this amount. It would take action at that point, and you would be able, because 1,000 is, to be completely honest, just what I set. We could look at 500. I mean, there's not a magic to. I thought 1,000 would speak to people.
Right.
But yes, at that time when we brought it back, we could bring that up for discussion, and ultimately you could pass what the value that you wanted it to be.
I think if and when you do bring it back, if we could see more than just the one scenario, that would be appreciated for me.
And I do want to say this is paying that stipend to every staff member on a title campus. That's paraprofessionals, your attendance clerk, every staff member on the campus when we give you this amount.
Okay. I'm going to provide an alternate point of view. It's in line with what Ms. Prosnick said. I think if this is an issue that you're having a hard time hiring for title campuses, so for the 76 teachers you talked about the other night, majority are title campuses, then, I'm willing to support whatever you ask for right now. I don't believe this is why people aren't teaching at Title I campuses. It's never been the case in LISD. We have people actually move from non-title campuses to title campuses, and very qualified teachers. Teachers who are Teacher of the Year at West Zone schools or Hebron that moved to Title I campuses. So I'm not sure this really fixes a real issue. I think we have a problem if we start stipending everything. You know, this happened before most of us were on the board. We stipended a lot of things in LISD, and a lot of those were removed. It begs the question, why is it that a clerk at a Title I campus, and some of these are barely Title I, by the way, deserves more of a stipend than someone that's a behavioral teacher or someone at the Student Success Center where, you know, in many cases, their safety is at risk. Remember how many teachers we were down last year? They were really kind of OSHA type things at the Student Success Center, and we had a hard time in staffing there. I think, you know, it's easy to say the broad brush Title I. Title I is not indicative of a necessary problem. It's a socioeconomic thing. It's not necessarily an LISD, a performance thing. And there are Title I campuses that prove that out. So I think we could get into a slippery slope. I appreciate that we are going to take time and think about this in the context of a budget, but I'm just going to say very adamantly and confidently, this is not why people are not going to Title I campuses. It's where we have a problem right now, but I don't think it's why people are going to Title I campuses. And all of us at this table can give names of people who left really wealthy campuses and went to Title I and are still there and are doing a heck of a job. So I'm not going to buy into the fact that Title I is a problem. It is a socioeconomic marker. It is not an academic performance marker. It's unfortunate, though, that sometimes scores, which designate the performance of schools, are tied to socioeconomics, and that's 100% of the time. So that said, you're asking us to consider something, that I think that's what you were saying to me. You're not asking for something now, but it is an ask potentially if we have the money, which I'm glad to consider it. But again, I would just ask, and Dr. Rapp and you and the staff, just think about, is this really fixing a problem? There are positions that I think in LISD that require stipends right now. If this is our approach, they require us to consider stipends right now, because we're going to lose them by December. And so I'm trying to take a more holistic view of this. And so I would ask that some of that be incorporated into that.
Well, and some of the positions that you mentioned just briefly there do already get a stipend because of that work. I mean, you brought up teams. That there's a stipend specifically for teams because of the challenges of their job. A lot of the special education positions that we have a stipend because of the additional challenges of their job. And while I will absolutely agree with you, I don't know that it will solve the problem. But I do know that today, 77% of our open positions are at title campuses. Will that solve the problem? I honestly, I don't know that. It is one of the reasons, though, why I suggested not giving it until the end of the year, because I don't want to advocate for giving somebody a stipend and they leave in 3 months. I'd much rather them get it when they stay with us for the year.
Yeah. Where are we at? So like some of the special ed positions, we did a $3,000 stipend. We were having problems 2 years ago, I think. Or last year. We did a $3,000 stipend. We've gone away from that, right?
It didn't, I mean, yes. What we did last year is we had a $3,000 signing bonus, which for every BIC teacher that we hired. And then we also gave that $3,000 signing bonus to our BIC teachers in addition to the stipend they were already getting. And we still lost BIC teachers. And so we did not have that this year. We did not roll that out for another year because it wasn't effective in keeping people in those positions. But they already do get a BIC stipend. That was a $3,000 in addition to. Right.
Okay, thank you for that. And that's really kind of making my point. I don't think retention bonuses solve things long-term. And in fact, I would offer, I'm not sure they offer things short-term. A sustainable stipend, like teams, let's say, or we used to have, I think, math teachers and science teachers even had stipends at one point, right? I mean, there were a lot of stipends. Sustainable stipends you become a part of compensation, right?
Absolutely.
I just, I'm going to predict this is not going to necessarily fix our problem, especially into year 2, but certainly willing to accept the will of the board and the recommendations that you bring. If you recommend it in January, I'll support it. So,
Well, I'll also break it down as I said I would, and we'll have a conversation in January and see what we think at that point.
great, thank you.
Maybe a task analysis. I'm not trying to make work for you, Ms. Smith, but maybe something along those lines would be helpful, because I promise you the data about attendance, I'll just use that, at Title I campuses is far more tedious and difficult, onerous than it is at non-title campuses. So maybe some of that task analysis
Absolutely.
would help assuage some of those concerns that we're hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. We are going to move to action items. Ms. Maloney.
Yes, Mr. Miller, Dr. Rapp, and members of the board, the action item before you this evening is an action item that comes before you every year at this time to consider the authorization to publish the proposed tax rate for 2022 and a notice of public meeting to discuss the budget and the tax rate for August the 29th. So this is the public where you have to publish your notice for the tax rate in the newspaper. We publish in the Denton Record Chronicle and Star local media newspapers to include the Leader that serve those communities that you see there, and the Lakeside Journal that serves the Colony. So we have submitted the following to the Texas Education Agency through the local property value study: the estimate of taxable values provided by the Denton Central Appraisal District and the certified taxable values provided by the Tarrant Appraisal District. Through the local property value study, it is calculating 11.62% property growth for the tax year 2021 to the tax year 2022, which produces a proposed maximum compressed tax rate of 80.8059. So what I have for you is the tax year 2021, school year 21, school year 21-22 MCR. That was what it was this year, and then what it is for next year, what we have received back from our preliminary from TEA at 80.59. So the proposed total tax rate for the tax year 2022, school year 22-23, is that Tier 1 maximum compressed tax rate of .080, I've said it a lot tonight, 0.8059, the Tier 2 enrichment pennies that are the level 1 golden pennies at .05, the 5 pennies that we have, and the debt service tax rate of .3809 for a total proposed tax rate of 1.2368. And that will be published, and that the recommendation is that the Board of Trustees authorizes this publishing of the proposed tax rate not to exceed $23.68 for tax year 2022, school year 22-23, in the notice of public meeting to discuss budget and tax rate.
Can I have a motion?
Got it.
Ms. Brosnick?
I move that the board authorize the publishing of the proposed tax rate not to exceed $1.2368 for tax year 2022, school year 2022-23, in the notice of public meeting to discuss budget and tax rate as recommended by administration.
Second, Dr.
Second.
Bonner? Okay. Before we vote on this, just a reminder, this is a statutory requirement. It's not setting the tax rate. It's just saying we're not going to go above it. We certainly would be delighted to have some information come in from other entities that allows us to lower this. But based on what we know now, this is the maximum that it would be, and it's a statutory requirement that we post this. And we will vote on the tax rate on the 29th. So with that, Ms. Lasan, do you have any questions? Christy?
I just wanted to mention that we really don't have any ability to adjust any of these things, even though, as we've discussed earlier, the amount of state revenue that we get for unfunded mandates would be nice to be able to recapture some of these money for our students. So this is really set by TEA state legislature.
Ms. Taylor? Okay, with that, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Dr. Rapp?
All right, so you have before you the two of the agreements that, of course, I shared we'd start bringing these forward as they became complete. So you've got the addition of the elementary rovers item for Lewisville and for Flower Mound. I just want to say publicly again that I appreciate Mr. Garrett and all of his work to get this program in place. I appreciate immensely our local police chiefs. I cannot put that on the record enough, and how many times they've met with us to review our safety plans for the upcoming school year. I appreciate our city and town managers working to also include things into their budgets as well to partner with us. And my back to school message goes out this week. It will talk about the addition of these elementary rovers for families to hear about, as well as a joint statement from myself and our local police chiefs about our increased safety measures for this coming school year.
Ms. Sells?
I'll make the motion. Thank you. I move that the board approve the addition of elementary rovers and authorize administration to execute agreements upon completion by respective cities as presented by administration.
I'm going to give Ms. Taylor a second. It was a tie because I think it's her first. So, all right. With that, Ms. Taylor is the second. Ms. Riggle. Any discussion? All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes 7-0. If there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 8:42 p.m.